6, 5.
Good evening. The special board meeting for the Rancho Board of Education for Monday, March 29th is now in session. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice President Morgan will give that if everyone could please mute their microphones.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Morgan. Kim, can you take a roll call for us?
Yes, ma'am. President Galbraith.
Present.
Vice President Morgan.
Present.
Secretary Scott.
Present.
Board Member Cullen.
Present.
And Board Member Coleman.
Present.
Everybody's here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone out tonight for the special board meeting. And tonight we're going to hear an update on the status and the plans of the reentry plan for April 5th, and that will happen in just a few minutes. But we'd like to welcome everyone who's coming in through YouTube. Our hopes is to be in the boardroom, at least as many of us can be, for our next meeting, which is on April 12th. Am I remembering that correctly? Checking my calendar here.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so tonight we'll go ahead and start with approving our prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda as it's been presented?
I move to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations.
Is there a second?
This is Board Member Coleman. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Noreen Scott and a second by Board Member Coleman. Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes, ma'am. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
And President Galbraith.
Yes.
That's 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, for our public comment tonight, we just have two. We have one from Bethany Sandcott, who is asking our schools not to open. We also received another public comment from Carmen Lopez asking for clarification on when there's a positive COVID case in the schools, what the process will be as we go into our April 5th reopening. Those are our two public comments for tonight. If you desire, those in our community desire to give public comment, please go to the RRPS board page. You'll see a form on that site and you can submit your comment. All board members read those comments and we are grateful to receive them. So moving on to our next item, which is commendations. For our commendation tonight, it is my honor to be able to give that commendation to our communications team. So our communications team, I would love it if you guys would all put your cameras on so we can see your faces. I will go ahead and announce who they are. It's so good to see you all. So we have Melissa Perez, who's our communications director, John Longwell, who is our digital media and web developer, JC Oliver, executive assistant, Tina Hinchman, our communications specialist, Claudia Valdez over special events. And we also have Kim Vesley. I don't know if she turned on her camera, but she has been working with them like for most of the year. And so Kim Vesley as well. And also, of course, we have Beth Pendergrass, who's our chief communications strategy engagement officer, who's over that whole entire team. Just as we go into this commendation tonight, just a quick story. As our elementary kids started going into school last semester, I was out on a bike ride, and as I was riding, I stopped at a gas station, and I had gotten a call from Beth Pendergrass letting us know about a positive case that happened. And this was a Saturday afternoon, and I was enjoying my day. And here our communications team was busy tracking down individuals in our community and the board members and letting us know what was going on. And that has honestly been probably one of the hardest things. Well, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but it's been a huge thing that you've had to do this year as we've gone through this school year, is work nights and weekends when it comes to those COVID cases that we have in our schools. And so just to kind of start off, I want to say thank you for working all of those long hours, and we see you and we're so grateful for that. But there's so much more that you all have done this year and every year. So right now your team, or this communications team, has successfully managed the COVID communications. We have that wonderful reentry newsletter that goes out, which looks so professional and helps our parents to know and be in the know of what's going on. Whether or not they read and know what's going on, right? That's a whole other story. But it is there for our community and for our parents to know what's going on. You have managed our social media pages. I go onto those Facebook pages, and I can't always say that I enjoy reading the comments, but I usually, we have some great, wonderful, positive comments. And as a team, as you answer those questions that are raised on there and issues that people may be having, and of course, we get to see all the wonderful positive things too that are going on in our district, which there are so many wonderful positive things, and keep everyone updated on everything happening in our schools and in our district. You have together, I think, probably answered just thousands and thousands of questions that have come out, and you always do it so gracefully and do it in a timely way. You, as a team, have developed our positive case process, as we were talking about earlier, and have managed the team that calls everyone. And as we were talking about, that takes weekends, that takes nights. And I've seen, you guys have done such an amazing job, because I think we've seen I think it's still somewhat overwhelming, but I definitely think you guys have streamlined that process and have gotten better at it, and have done just an amazing job at going through those things. Let's see, what else do I have here? We also, of course, John is on, and he's been running our background, right? He runs all of our meetings, which we really, really appreciate. I think probably at the beginning it was a little tense. I know we've had a couple of moments where things have shut down and we've gotten them up and running again. And so we really appreciate that, that he's able to run our YouTube meetings. You guys also are over our parent, those parent universities, which are amazing, and another way just to help our district and our parents to know what's going on in our schools and help them to understand all the different options that we have, and help to educate not just our children, but our families as a whole. I think I could go on and on and on, but you have done amazing work this year. And as I said, sometimes it gets frustrating when you receive questions and you're like, I have put this out in every possible way that I can think of. And sometimes people don't see that. But I truly am grateful for how professional each and every one of you are as you go and work with our families and our school community. And so I just want to say thank you for all that you do. I know that your voices are out there all the time, but sometimes you may not feel like you're being heard or seen, and you truly are seen and are doing amazing work. We are so lucky to have such a wonderful communications team. So thank you for all that you do. I'd like to give Dr. Cleveland just a second, and then if you guys want to say anything, you are more than welcome to.
Well, I would just echo that. I know you know there's been so many additional hours of work that it's just, but you don't know how many hours of work it really has been. And so it is all weekends, some weekends, and it is late in the evening, and they've given a lot of time to deal with some of those issues. But I think the more important piece, and that was, both are very important, but it's been, as you mentioned, just keeping the community informed. And we've been through tough times, we've been through real challenges, but trying to at least let people have the information. They're always better off once they know the facts and have something to work from. And so been a tremendous amount of communication this year with staff and with parents and community and the board, and it's helped us, I believe, get through a really challenging year. So I want to just add my thanks to all of the team and the hard work that they've done. It has been truly a phenomenal effort. And I'll say one other quick thing. The word had kind of gotten around, and so Beth and Renee and I, we did a presentation for the aspiring superintendents. And the way we got this wonderful little job on top of everything else was that Gloria Rendon, who's one of the organizers of the academy, has grandchildren in this district. And so she had an opportunity to see it firsthand, the amount of communication that had gone out, and wanted us to share that with aspiring superintendents and all of their mentors. So that was an extra, a little bit of a recognition for the fine work that they've done. So thank you. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. So communications team, if there's anything that you guys would like to say, I'd love to just give you an opportunity to say that. I don't know the best way to go through. There's a lot of you on with us. How about you, Beth? You want to start us off? You can
I
even
see
speak.
Noreen has her hand raised. Do you want me
Oh,
to?
I will let her. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead, Noreen. I always, sometimes I miss the little tiny, white circle. Go ahead.
I would like to say a special thank you to the team for their involvement in the community. I think that not just sending out information, but they actively go out and create a positive impression about the school district in the community. And I can't thank you enough for that. I think it's one of Rio Rancho School District's biggest strengths is that we communicate well throughout the community. So thank you very much. And Beth, especially thank you to you. You really attend meetings at all hours of the day and evening, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Noreen. I'll go ahead and go through the board and see if anyone else wants to say anything if you'd like to add. Wynn Coleman, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. It's impressive to see how the communications department has evolved, and the things that when I, for example, just personally would have a question about how accessible and available the communications department is to get back with me, and really seeing, I think this is great to see, really show off all the different things that they do. From special events, which I've been fortunate to be a part of, to just the reentry and the consistent maybe stamp of what the district really stands for and what we're doing and what we're working through. So just a great group of people. It's just an honor to get the chance to interact and work with everybody. So thank you so much.
Catherine Cullen.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say how much we appreciate you. I know that my term on the board, I've seen this has expanded, and the communication that has gone out has been tremendous in informing parents and students. And, Beth has done a wonderful job, and John, all of you have, but John, with getting the YouTube up, this has been such a challenging year. And I can't imagine how much work that you have put into getting everything ready. I know that I've talked to Melissa a few times when I was over at the district office. This has been a very challenging year. So not only what I've seen, how it's expanded and how it's grown over the years, but this year especially. So we really do appreciate everything that you all do. So thank you. And everybody's pretty much said the same things. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. And then Jeffrey Morgan.
The other board members pretty much said it. Again, all I just want to say is thanks for all your hard work and your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, Beth.
All right. Well, I just want to, I thank you so much I couldn't have said it better. I work with an incredible team of individuals who work very hard to do whatever they can to help get the information out and answer very difficult questions and continue to remain positive and keep their heads up. And I can't say it enough about how appreciative I am of each and every single one of them. And we're just going to continue to do our best to even get better and find new and better ways of communicating with our community. But I wanted to add in my thanks as well, because I really do have an incredible team.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to say anything, you are more than welcome to unmute. And say
Also, if I can add, when it comes to the rapid response, we really do have quite a large team. Obviously, the communications team makes up a core of that, but we have a group of dedicated volunteers that are side by side with us, making those phone calls on weekends, during spring break, at night. So we couldn't do it without all of them as well within the district. So it certainly takes a whole team to roll out the communications. Really, transparency is key, and that's one thing that I can tell you that every single member of the communications team feels strongly about, that transparency and information for our parents and our Rio Rancho Public Schools community is really the most important thing. We care about safety, we care about getting information out, and this team is truly dedicated. I like Beth, I'm very thankful that we have such a good group.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. I know I was looking at my emails coming in over spring break, and I'm like, no, there's still things going on. Anyone else want to add anything? Okay. All right. Thank you guys. You truly are a great team. I honestly look at so many of our teams in the district and just feel so grateful to be a part of Rancho Public Schools. So thank you for being awesome. We appreciate it. Okay, so now we will move to our reports, which is the update on the status of our school reentry for April 5th, 2021. Dr. Cleveland, I'm guessing I'm handing that over to you to kind of navigate through.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to, just what we would like to do this evening is update you on the reopening. We've had some questions from the board. We've also had questions from some of our staff, and we've had some community questions. So we've tried to roll all of that into this presentation so that people will kind of know where we stand on the reopening and the things that have been done. It probably will work better if you will let us kind of go through the presentation, because I think as questions come up, they may very well be answered on down the line in terms of the slides. So if you have questions, certainly we'll answer them. But it might be a little better if you would write them down, and we'll try to get to them toward the end. But certainly if there's one that's really pressing and you want an answer then right now, then by all means, certainly raise the question. And I do think in a sense our reopening is a little bit anticlimactic, because all we have left is 2 additional grade levels to bring back. So the vast majority of our students are already here, they're already in class, but we'll be welcoming back the last 2 grade levels, and I'm very glad to see them come back as well. And I would just tell you, I think overall we're in pretty good shape to begin on the 5th and to finish out the school year. And hopefully we can provide you the information that will assure you that that is the case. One of the things I was thinking about during the commendations is that we have a really good track record in terms of student safety and staff safety. And we don't have evidence of spread through the school district, through the schools. And so the cases, we have plenty of cases, but they've come in from external sources and have been tracked down. And so we know there has not been a lot of spread. That only happens when there's been really good planning and good work. So the contact tracing that takes hours and hours and hours has produced good results, and we have been able to track down people who have been exposed and keep them out of the buildings. And so the process, which has been developed over a long period of time now, has just produced really solid results. So it's not just it's not just the process; it's been the results, and so their hard work has certainly benefited the district. So we'll now move to the full reentry plan and the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over now to Jana and Renee to talk about our reentry numbers as we know them right now. And so I will turn it over initially to Renee and then to Jana. Thanks.
But I think we're going to switch it up on you and let Jana go first.
Backwards, my apologies.
Kim, can we have the next slide, please?
Okay, there we go. I forgot which one we had first. My apologies. We went through all of these this afternoon, added a few things, did a few changes, and so Janet, it's all yours.
Thank you. President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. What you have in front of you are survey results from the survey that we sent to families asking who would be interested in maintaining their virtual status for the rest of this year and what their plans would be for next year. So you have those numbers in front of you so you can see. Currently, we have a little over 5,000 students in person from preschool all the way to 5th grade, and about 2,400 of those are virtual. And we had an additional 524 students broken down by grades there who want to come back 5 days a week. So you can see per grade, as for the most part, as the students get older, more of them wanted to come back. So that's an addition of 524 students across all campuses. And then looking forward to next year, we had 576 students who are currently K-5 interested in a virtual option next year. So if you subtract the 100 that are in 5th grade, we're at about 475 without incoming kindergartners. So that will help us plan moving forward about what we're going to do for next year, which we're working on. Next slide, Kim. Okay.
And then at secondary, we sent out the same survey. We got about 70-ish% responses. So it's hard to say exactly what we're going to see on Monday. I think that, elementary has been in a while longer, so their numbers are a little firmer. We pulled these numbers from Power School, which the registrars, as students want to be virtual or in person, as those numbers came in, they would be changing them in Power School. So right now, we have anywhere from 50 to 60% of students that want to be in person. It's kind of funny, the older that they get, the less they want to be in. It's the opposite of elementary. So our highest percentage, you see a higher percentage at 6th and 9th grade, which is they're, hopefully excited to get back into school, into their new schools. We don't have the additional number of in-person for full reentry. We weren't able to pull that. And our numbers, 296 middle schoolers are looking at a full virtual experience next year, and 322 in high school. Yeah, that's about all I have to say. We've held pretty steady at that 60-40 split. My guess is that's what we'll see on Monday, but until we're actually there, I don't know that we can give you better numbers than this.
And I would also add at elementary, it's easier because they're self-contained with one teacher, so we can get information from parents too. It's much more difficult at secondary. So what are we going to do that would look different coming back? Our cafeterias look pretty much the same. We did have to move some dividers at some of the schools and change some of the setup just for more students coming back, but we've kept the barriers in the cafeteria. We have asked families, once they selected, to stay either in person or virtual now. It's been very challenging for our teachers to have kids moving back and forth. So we really want for the rest of this year to limit that as much as possible, except for students who are on quarantine. We've had questions from parents about, well, what if we want to travel? Can we if we want to go somewhere for 2 weeks, can we just stream into the classroom? And the answer is no. We're going back to our previous attendance procedures. That would be an unexcused absence, and they would have to, get the work from the teacher and make it up. we can't keep expecting our teachers to do this. They're tired. They're doing a wonderful job, but it's taken a toll on them. And so we really need to return to regular attendance procedures, and only in cases of quarantining will students be streaming into the classroom. We will be back to 5 days a week, which is the early release on Wednesday, except for Colinas and Puesta, because they go full days, 5 days a week. I see you trying, Kim. I know you're trying. Thank you. I did want to introduce you to Rachel Aker. She has been our assistant principal overseeing our virtual students and teachers this year and really supporting all the campuses. Rachel has a background as an ed tech in our district, and so she brought that experience to the table, which has been so valuable. I can't even express her knowledge of how to do instruction virtually. So Rachel's here to join us to answer questions as well. She has been working with teachers, and she's had virtual PLCs with them all along. So she works with all the schools to schedule those and has opportunities for the virtual teachers to come together and talk about what's unique for them and what their experiences are. She's worked on scheduling with all the schools so that students are getting their related arts. Rachel, is there anything you want to add specifically? I know you had an opportunity that you might want to share with EdTech, CNI, and some of the teachers that are streaming into their classroom.
Yes. So hi, I'm Rachel Aker. Nice to meet you. We're providing some support for teachers who are going to have to stream in students. So we do have CNI, and I think we have the flyer on the next page, is working to provide some support and a panel discussion about balancing those in-person and remote students at the same time. They also provided this for the intermediate students or teachers. And it was a great success. So we're inviting elementary teachers to have that as well. We do have a few virtual teachers who have opted to have some of their students come in person with them while they continue to stream online. So we're trying to support the virtual teachers in that way, as well as the hybrid teachers who have students streaming in for the quarantine issues. We are continuing to work with the virtual teachers to make sure that they're aligned. They are going to 5 days in person. So they were 4 days synchronous and 1 day asynchronous before, and now they're going to have meets on Wednesdays as well. And that's the biggest updates. We're mostly able to stay the same for those virtual families, which I think they really appreciate.
I know one of the questions was, how are we going to continue to support students who are virtual? I have been with Rachel in her office when she's talked to parents and worked with parents to get supports for students, have counselors reach out. Today, she was working on a SAT for a virtual student. She really is the connection for a lot of the campuses with these parents, even though they are still tied to, it's kind of messy how it's all scheduled. She's been able to figure that out. She provides a lot of that support with parents and then gets the resources to the kids. So she'll continue to do that moving into the rest of this year as well. And Rachel, Joy Morales, and I are working with Kurt Schmidt and Jerry Reeder, Mike Chavez, and how we're going to staff and what it will look like next year. We will be presenting that to cabinet soon and then bringing it to the board of what our recommendation will be for next year.
All righty, secondary. So secondary will also be going 5 days a week. We have given everybody a chance, whether you were Google Meet or hybrid, to come in person. There's about 150 high school students who are on Edgenuity, and those students need to stay on Edgenuity because even though the curriculum is the same standards, they're at different places. So there are a few students who are at high school who are virtual Edgenuity that will need to stay virtual, but that was made clear from the beginning that they were gonna be virtual as long as they chose Edgenuity. but all of the students who were virtual Google Meets had the option to come back. Will be 5 days a week. The middle schools have chosen to go on to continue on a block schedule all day, except for Eagle Ridge. They've chosen to have all of their classes meet every day. And that was just an individual school preference. The principal felt like that was best for her students. Cleveland and Rancho will all be meeting every day with all of their students. Cyber, they're going to their normal schedule, which was Monday and Tuesday high school students. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be middle school. And at IHS, they're going back to their normal schedule, which is basically a block schedule, but they're always on a block schedule. Teachers, all teachers 612 will have both virtual and in-person students. They had the opportunity, Rachel and the group talked to secondary teachers who really appreciated them. I think that they're going to try to do it again with secondary, so more teachers can have the option to be a part of that panel discussion. You know, we're working with CNI on, and Carl's going to talk about exactly what they're doing, but every teacher will have both virtual and students in their classroom. Attendance procedures, if you're present in the classroom, we have a code for physically present because there is it's not an easy thing for a teacher to just see if a student is in person or virtual. I mean, obviously, if they're there, they're in person, but if they're absent, knowing whether they're virtual or not can be difficult. It's not something they can easily just pull up on a screen. So we have a physically present code. Students that are quarantined will be attending class through Google Meets. And then I am going to hand it over to Carl Leppelman.
Well, thank you, Renee. Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. We've learned a lot since the pandemic about how to teach virtually. And I think back to Future Ready, it's really good that we're future ready. Without those skill sets, our teachers, it would have been really a struggle. I have to say that the reason it's going to work is because of our creative, talented teachers. They really are creative. It's like any creative teacher in the classroom, you adapt based on the conditions you have. And so I want to thank them. But the first and foremost is to continue to provide that additional support to teachers. To students via Google Meets after school and on Saturday based on demand. So we definitely want to continue that because that option for the afternoon Google Meets is now not there because students are in class. So we definitely want to provide that additional support. Now, in some cases, in some schools, that's occurring. We have lots of demand for that. In other schools, there isn't that, for example, Saturday demand. So we definitely want to continue that practice based on student need. The middle school content teacher leaders and our instructional leaders at the high school, as well as our district coordinators within my department, have participated in sessions on effective concurrent teaching and learning. And so we have a whole new vernacular, a whole new vocabulary, concurrent teaching and learning. If you go out and look, you see a lot of that out in literature, what works and doesn't work. It's the same thing as simultaneous learning. And so we've been working for the last month or two looking at how do we make that work. It is a challenge. Obviously, it'd be better at secondary if we had that separated out. And we need to acknowledge that's a challenge for our teachers to do that. And we're learning new skills as we move along, and we're learning some of those skills together. And I think that's really good. The ed techs and CNI have and will continue to provide support to teachers that are transitioning to concurrent teaching, and that's all of secondary virtually. Some have been doing that already. One really excellent document that we can send to you is I call it a handbook. It's called Concurrent Classroom Model, Teaching and Learning Guidance for Spring 2021. That resource was put together by the coordinators in CNI along with collaboration with teachers, our instructional leaders at the high school, middle school content leaders, And I think that's an excellent document. Some of the examples would be teachers using breakout rooms just to connect those students. And let's look at the next slide, could we, Kim? Because this is a challenge right here. And it's something that some teachers have been doing at the elementary already, as discussed earlier. And we can learn from that model. In the cyber world, you have students in group B and you have students in the classroom. And so in a synchronous lesson, you can actually engage students. So in a breakout room, let's say the students up by letter B really need to connect with students, a couple students close to them near letter A. And you can connect them in a breakout room to look at not only building collaboration or working on a project or looking at a specific skill while others are working. As a teacher, you could actually provide some intervention and support. So I think teachers are creative and they can actually provide that. At the elementary, obviously it's 25 students. At the middle school, high school, it's 150 to 165. So I think that's where it gets a little more challenging as you have more and more students that you're addressing. But I think that document will be a really good opportunity for us to. The other thing we want to do is at each school on Wednesday afternoons during our PLC is get together and say what's working, not working. How can we support students, just like if they were all face-to-face, how can we support them? How can we support you teachers in with the technology you need, with the skill sets you need, with the applications you need? And we have a strong IT department, ed techs, to help with that also. So this model is new nationally, and we're learning a lot as we go. Next slide. And I'll turn this over, I think, to Mike Baker. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board, good evening. So I'll be going over some operation issues. As you know, we have been dealing with COVID safe practices in our school system for many, many months now. And most of what we will be reviewing this evening is nothing new, but yet something that we've actually practiced for some time. One of the safe practices has to do with social distancing, and as we all know, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. Fairly recently, the CDC reduced that to 3 feet. However, the Department of Health in New Mexico, they have not changed their position at this time. Hopefully they will soon. However, in the toolkit does give us a little bit more flexibility on the 6 feet, and they use the language to the greatest extent possible. And essentially what that means is we will have our desks and our chairs spaced typically about 6 feet apart. However, with more kids and students entering the classroom, it may be difficult to actually maintain that 6 foot distance. So in such cases where there are more than typically, let's say 15 students per class, and each classroom, we don't have one size fits all in regard to classrooms. Classrooms make up many, many different types of sizes, but using, let's say, the 15 number, which seems to be kind of an average, we may have more than, let's say, 15 students in a classroom. There could be 18, there could be 19. So we may not be able to meet that 6 foot social distancing in the classroom, but we certainly will do the best we can, depending upon how many students actually physically enter our schools. In order to best maintain social distancing, we will have additional staff throughout the school that will be focused on safety measures to include social distancing, wearing of masks, and those sort of things. In the updated toolkit, student temperatures are not mandatory that we take them. However, staff, they will be observing their students and spending more time, especially in the beginning of the day, looking at their students and seeing if students appear to be ill or maybe acting a little bit different than normal. And in this way, they can, if a teacher does observe something maybe out of the ordinary, they could send that student to the nurse's office to have their temperature checked. Next slide, please. PPE. At the current time, we have sufficient PPE on hand. We have extra stock that is at each school site. We also have additional PPE in our warehouse ready for distribution if school sites do run out. We do regularly order PPE in order that we do have an adequate supply on hand. Sandoval Regional Medical Center has donated 3,000 face shields. And at this time, we do have sufficient PPE. Some of the PPE, such as N95s, are difficult to get. However, we do, at the current time, we do have sufficient N95 for our staff. Sometimes some of the disposable gloves, sometimes that becomes a little difficult to obtain, but we do have an order in on some of those various different sizes of gloves. Next slide, please. Mask requirements. This is nothing new. The Department of Health, since really the beginning of the pandemic for the most part, has required that people in schools wear masks. And this is something that we've been doing for quite some time. We do have additional disposable masks in case our students forget to bring their masks to school. We also have disposable masks on the bus in case students forget their mask. And this way, when they get on the bus, we will give them a disposable mask. In the event that someone refuses to wear a mask, they will be asked to go into virtual learning. However, there are some exceptions to those students that don't necessarily have to wear a mask. And those exceptions, for example, are those that are under the age of 2, students that have trouble breathing, and those folks that are unconscious or otherwise incapacitated. Next slide, please. Contact tracing. I believe this slide, I'll turn it over to, I think it's Mike Chavis is up next. Or no, it's you,
me.
Beth?
Beth Pendergrass.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Beth.
President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, Mr. Baker went over some of the changes that we've seen in the toolkit that we've put into place in the schools. A couple other changing that have been beneficial to us as we work on the contact tracing has been now the individuals who have had a positive COVID test within the last 90 days, they're no longer required to quarantine if they're identified as a close contact to someone who has COVID. In addition, individuals who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19, they no longer have to quarantine either if they come into close contact with someone who has a positive COVID and are infectious. And kind of what they mean by fully vaccinated is 2 weeks following either the last dose or the only dose. So if it's Johnson, it's 2 weeks after the Johnson & Johnson dose. If it's Pfizer, Moderna, it's 2 weeks after your last dose that you're considered fully vaccinated. And they do limit that to just within 3 months. So 3 months from your last dose is the time frame from when you're fully vaccinated. And so we'll monitor that. And then the same with surveillance testing. Individuals who provide evidence that they have their full COVID-19 vaccination, they no longer have to participate in the surveillance testing. So those are some good changes that have been helpful to us.
Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board. We also want to take a look at where we're at with staffing in the schools. As Dr. Cleveland mentioned earlier, we actually we're looking pretty good. You know, the interesting thing is, even though, you know, we've had quite a number of resignations this year, we've also continued to hire throughout the year. And I anticipate that hiring will continue and probably increase and improve as the vaccinations continue to roll out. So one of the things that I really wanted to point out that Jana had mentioned earlier is that in reality, elementary has been in session pretty much the whole year. They have had sufficient staff. It's been a little dicey a couple times, but we've made it work. And they've had sufficient staff so far this year. And we'll have all staff on hand after April 5th to assist with the management of students in the building. To date, all of the primary grades have been on campus throughout the year. So the elementaries are in pretty good shape because they've had some pretty good practice already. And so far, as of the week before spring break, there were really only 2 principal requests for additional support for additional 4th graders who would be coming into the schools based on returning from remote learning. Secondary staff will all be on site as well. And one thing I wanted to point out was that 60% of the students will be on campus, approximately 60%. However, the entire staff will be on campus. And the schools, I know, are working very, very hard to creatively accommodate the numbers of students that will be on campus. And we'll take a look at how many vacancies we have in just a minute. Each school has hired a number of teacher interns. That has been an extremely successful program. At this point, we have about 32 interns district-wide. As a fallback, we can always call on district office staff. We've had tremendous response from our district office staff, as always, to go out and help. They can't always fill in as substitutes, but they can certainly help with things like lunch duty, recess duty, parking lot duty, things like that, in order to help the teachers who may need to work in the classrooms with students. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, although we have vacancies, not one school has an obscenely high number of vacancies. And the other thing that is helping a lot is what Beth just mentioned, is that because we're quarantining far fewer people, we are going to have far fewer openings on a regular basis like we did for the first 2/3 of the year. So we're going to be in a much better position to have the majority of our staff on campus. The substitute office is working very closely with the school sites, and I'm happy to report that we are seeing more of our substitutes coming back and being willing to come into our buildings. We have offered the vaccines. We've opened up the vaccine sign-ups when Beth has had those. We've opened those up to our substitutes as well as any other staff, because we really need those people. You know, we rely on them very, very heavily. And finally, we have a list right now because staff are not required to come on campus. So let me explain this a little bit. Once you are fully vaccinated, and as Beth explained, that's 14 days past your last dose, you are required to return to work. If you've been offered the vaccine and you decline, you are still required to come to work. If you are waiting for your second dose, so we have people receiving their second dose this week because they had already gotten their first Moderna or their Pfizer dose prior to spring break and prior to our Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We have a list of those folks because they will not be required to return to campus until that 14-day period post final dose is up. So we have a list of those folks. We're working with the principals and letting them know this person won't be required to return to campus until such and such a date. But that way we know who, and we are informing those people, then you do have to come and be on campus. Next slide, please. So our vacancies honestly don't look all that horrible, guys. We have about 36 teacher vacancies across the district right now. But if you think about that, that is not all that abnormal, especially I know Catherine and Wynn were with us a couple years ago when we had 45 or so vacancies, and there was no pandemic. So we're actually not doing too badly. We have about 41 EA vacancies, but we are seeing an increase in hiring right now as people are willing. As a matter of fact, I had conversations with a couple principals today who said, am I still allowed to hire people? And I said, absolutely. So we're still in the process of hiring and adding people in. And the good news is we may have 36 teacher vacancies, but we hired 32 interns. So we do have people to step in and assist with those classrooms. So we're looking actually pretty good as far as our numbers of staff. Next slide, please. And then here's some other good news. We do still have about 31 custodial openings, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about bus drivers and custodians and stuff in just a minute. However, I will tell you that we did just recently, right before spring break, we increased our custodial salaries. We moved the starting wage, the lowest starting wage for custodians, up to $13 an hour. That is $2 an hour over what APS currently pays, according to their website. We are already seeing a number of applicants coming in, and that was what Mike had said earlier that Melanie had passed along to him. I am showing 6 bus driver openings. However, that's a little that number's a little interesting, and Mike's going to talk about that in just a minute. Out of the entire district, out of 20 schools, we only have 3 health EA openings. We have 5 care room aides hired right now, and I will tell you that the plan is to take 3 of those care room aides, and 3 of them would like to become health assistants. So we will be fully staffed with our health assistants in those nursing offices in about a week or so. And right now we have 0 nurse openings. We are fully staffed with our nurses. Quite frankly, we're doing pretty well with our staff. I think people really like working for this district. And I just have to say on a personal note that I am so appreciative to all of our staff for sticking with us, standing by us, and standing by our kids. Thank you very much.
I would like to just add one thing before we move on to transportation. Just some information that is important related to this. That is that we're down 900 students. So depending on how many of those come back, we will have to staff for those. And so that's another unknown factor right now. We just really don't know how many of them will be back and how many additional people we will have to hire as they come back. Timing will be everything. And trying to figure out what we're willing to take, and this will be discussed in the finance meeting, how much of a risk do we take in terms of, do we take any risk for growth and allocate some additional positions now, or wait until we see what the growth looks like. But if you do that, then you don't necessarily get the best candidates at all. So we're probably looking at some kind of a compromise there. But again, we are in a lot better shape than many districts, and I would really want to thank HR. We've just been very assertive in trying to keep us staffed during this really difficult time.
Okay, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board, Chief Operations Officer Michael Baker again. Transportation, especially now is particularly a challenge. However, in the new toolkit, again, they use the words to the greatest extent possible. So the toolkit basically says that there's a maximum of 2 students per seat. And so that puts great limitations on how many students we can have on a bus. However, if some buses are actually over that number, instead of the bus finishing its route and coming back to pick up those students, because of this language, we could pick up those students, and we will do that because we do not want the students to be late for class. And the whole idea behind in-person learning is to get these students to class and get them on time. We believe that the transportation system has been very safe. We haven't seen any evidence of spread. And we will continue to ensure that our buses are clean and disinfected. And we will separate the students on the bus as much as possible. In order to speed up the process, because of COVID, attendance is taken on the bus. Starting next week, we will no longer take attendance on the bus, and the purpose of taking attendance on the bus is to assist us with contact tracing. This way we know exactly who to contact in case somebody has a positive COVID test. However, we will still be able to investigate because we do have cameras on the bus. And so this process will just take us longer in order to identify all the people on a particular bus. However, this is the method that we're going to have to utilize in order to get all the students to class on time. Wednesday's transportation, because it is not a full day, will be a little bit more challenging. Students should be able to get to class on time. However, the dismissal times are pretty narrow. And so there could be some times where buses run a little bit late when they're driving the students back home. Next slide, please. Next slide has to do with facilities. Go ahead and switch to the next slide, please. So the facility department, certainly there was a lot of changes in the way we maintain our facilities, such as disinfecting, cleaning, and air filtration. Everything that we've essentially done in the past, we will continue to do. Excuse me. All the safe COVID practices are still in play. And as you know, and we've talked about this fairly often, is PED recommends that we have MERV 13 filtration at our school sites. Most of our schools do have MERV 13. Those schools that do not have MERV 13, we have HEPA filters in each classroom. At the current time, I think we've deployed something over 350 HEPA filters throughout the district in order to help with the filtration. Social distancing markers have been placed throughout the school, cafeteria, hallways, one-way tape has been laid out on the hallways. There's been signage according to PED regulations posted throughout the schools. Next slide, please. Lunches are a particular challenge because largely because of social distancing. And the elementary schools, we've been serving lunches at the elementary schools, and that will continue. The middle schools, they have expanded to 3 lunches a day. The high schools will continue to serve 2 lunches a day. And the comprehensive high schools where there are more students, certainly at those schools. They are going to change the lines in order to facilitate the social distancing process as much as possible. Also, students, and typically students at the high school level and even middle school levels, they typically like to gravitate outside anyway, so that the outdoors will be encouraged to be used. We do have picnic tables out there and some shade structures as well. We will still offer curbside pickup for those students that have that are being served virtually. They can pick up that curbside meals on Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 different locations. So in the past and in the future, students essentially will be fed. Next slide, please. And I believe the next slide goes to Tana Burgos.
Yes, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland, hopefully you can hear me okay. So a lot of this information is information that you have definitely been shared before and have an understanding of what we've been doing in the district for quite some time. I'm super proud of all of our counselors. Oops. Oh, okay, thanks. Super proud of all of our counselors in our district. They work so hard at our school, and we have a total of 45 of them in the district. So we'll continue to provide multiple levels of support and programs for students in need. These programs we have presented, as I said before, and they're readily available and implemented consistently across the district. Actually, right now, I'm doing evaluations with all of our school counselors, and so they're able to share all of their goals and how they've met them, and also their student surveys from their students. And the students have been responding and have been getting comments and saying how incredible their counselors have been in supporting them through this time. Counselors will continue to have office hours, visit classrooms, and they also hold online Google Meets, and they'll continue those as well. And we'll see at the lower bullet, the 4th bullet, it'll talk about going into the Google Classrooms. They also continue to check in regularly and individually with all students, including working on next step plans with students in grades 8 through 12, which is a one-on-one conference and discussion and having those completed. The counselors have set up times to meet online with virtual students. In addition, counselors communicate with virtual teachers regularly and visit Google Classrooms. And so that will continue with our virtual students as well. And, you know, this one's really the last bullet to me. They're all important, but, you know, our counselors are always looking for signs of issues with students that they could be exhibiting. They will continue to work with our students and look for any additional supports that might be needed. And we use all of the resources that we have in the community consistently, MOUs with FUAs, working with agencies. But it is important to remember that counselors are not clinical counselors, and they have to refer to outside agencies through our mental health referral system if it really is something really serious in nature. And they do, however, provide support during the time resources are being sought. And there's many, many other things that I know we've presented on this year that our counselors are doing, but this just kind of highlights that they are constantly meeting one-on-one with families, one-on-one with students. For instance, our seniors obviously is a little bit different this year at one of our high schools. And so there is an increase in needing to meet with families. And so they are actually meeting with those families one-on-one, and they've sent out personal letters, they've made personal phone calls, and they're actually coming in to meet with them one-on-one. So there's a lot of different strategies that are happening on our campuses, and they do a phenomenal job. And I actually think they have a lot of weight on their shoulders because they wish that they could reach all of our students every day. And so I do know they're just working really, really hard to support our students. And I believe there's the next slide. I think I only have, yeah.
Yay, graduations. I'm excited to talk about this year. If we could go to the next slide, please. So President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, graduations this year hopefully will be able to take place at the comprehensive high schools. We're looking at having them in the stadiums. The Department of Health and PED have told us that we can lock in with the county color 2 weeks prior to graduation. That's nice, but we need more than 2 weeks time planning. We're going to do the best that we can and kind of trying to foresee where we're at. If you are in the red, there will be no spectators, so we would have to go back to like the drive-throughs or something like that. In the yellow, we can have 25% capacity in an outdoor venue and nothing indoors. If it's green, we can have 25% capacity in an indoor venue with 50% in an outdoor venue. And if we get to the magic turquoise, then we can get 33% of an indoor and 75% of an outdoor. So basically, we're making the huge assumption that we'll be in yellow. So we're the planning right now, and we do understand that that can change. And if something, you know, I mean, heaven forbid that we're back into red. If we're in green, we would be able to give out more tickets at that outdoor venue. So right now, like I said, the two comprehensives are looking at, and I think this might be on the next slide, at stadium graduations. We're still working with the alternatives, independents, and cyber to figure out exactly what they want to do. In the outdoor, well, at all of the graduations, of course, everyone will need to wear masks. There'll be social distancing. Obviously, if you have your family, we can do little pods of 5 for the family members, but social distancing with among the different families. There will be no food or drink. Any kind of singing, or if we're playing instruments, of course, we're going to be following all of the rules that we need to follow. The next slide, please. We're, you know, so of course, when you say that you can do this with graduation, other questions start coming up. Assemblies, dances, award assemblies, academic competitions, and extracurricular events. We're limiting this to the most essential events. So no dances, no assemblies, basically. You know, we're excited that we can have graduation the way that we can have it. Anything else is going to be severely limited. And this does include kindergarten and 5th grade grad promotions. We will not be holding those in the way that we're looking at graduation. I don't know exactly what they're going to plan in the elementaries, but it won't be your typical way that we had it prior to this, prior to COVID. Of course, with all other school-related events, COVID-safe practices have to be followed. No food or drinks once again, and this is just kind of a repeat of the end of the last slide. But we're excited to be planning graduations in the stadiums for the two comprehensives this year. The next slide, please. And then I'm going to hand it over to Larry Chavis to talk about athletics.
There we go. I'm on camera. Good evening, Madam President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board. First of all, I'd like to thank the Communications Department. This group worked long, odd hours with contact tracing, especially when it comes to the concerns with athletics. So I'd like to thank Beth's department. It's very much appreciated when we've had a COVID-19 positive in athletics. After all the tribulations and trials, athletic events are finally underway. Athletics is following all NMPED guidelines, NMAA return to play guidelines, and governor's orders, such as transportation, following the NMPED toolkit guidelines, of student of per seat, the use of locker rooms at 25%, 100% mask wearing of coaches and student athletes, social distancing, and the color designation of your county as a guide for the attendance of athletic events. Currently, Sandoval County is designated as a yellow county. This would fall under the 25% capacity for outdoor events and no spectators for indoor events. And anyone who is attending an athletic event on campus must adhere to the mask wearing mandate. At the high school level, fall sports, which began basically at the beginning of March, is now winding down their seasons, as such as volleyball, soccer, football are entering their postseason, and cross country just finished the state championships, in which Rio Rancho High School girls cross country won the state championship, and the Cleveland boys won their state championship, and the Rio Rancho boys were state runner-ups. So our cross country teams did an excellent job over the weekend. We do have a big game on Saturday night. I'm not sure if everyone knows. Cleveland boys will be football team will be playing in the UNM football stadium at 4:00 on Saturday against Las Cruces, and those tickets are can be purchased online, and it's on our website. Beth's group also put those out on the website. Winter seasons began over spring break, as basketball season is underway, and we had our first home games on Saturday night. Wrestling began today, and swimming is delayed and will begin in the next couple of weeks, as some pools across the state of New Mexico have not opened up as of yet. Spring sports actually will begin on April the 10th and conclude at the end of June with their spring sports postseason. Middle school sports. Fall season will conclude this week. The winter season will begin next Monday, and the spring season will begin the first week of May. All these seasons will be 4 to 5 weeks long, and they will end before the last day of school, unlike the high school seasons, which will end at the end of June. We decided, the athletic coordinators and myself, that we would not have any middle school sports seasons after the end of the school year. And lastly, I would like to recognize our athletic directors, Vince Metzger, Matt Martinez, and their staffs. While everyone was on spring break, they were busy all week long hosting events, from sub-varsity football on Monday, volleyball on Tuesdays and Thursday, soccer on Wednesday and Saturday, the Cleveland Rio Rancho football game on Friday, and our first home basketball games on Saturday night. We have a very dedicated group of individuals, and I just wanted to recognize them as they worked the entire spring break while we were off. And I thank you.
Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. We'll briefly go over fine arts preparations. So the next slide, please. Physical preparations, the room teachers have worked very hard preparing their rooms and measuring out space for their classes. So that is done. Just so you know, equipment sharing will be kept to a minimum, and there, of course, as per PED and common sense guidelines, there will be no sharing of wind instruments or mouthpieces. We have had to order specialized PPE for wind instrument playing and singing. This includes masks for instrumentalists that accommodate mouthpieces, instrument bell covers, and specialized singing masks that hold material away from the lips for proper vocal technique, etc. One thing that will help out very much K-12 is that if students can be allowed to help not sanitize, but wipe down equipment between classes. And I have talked to the teachers about how to do that. I have recommended that they maybe not consider that with kindergartners and first graders, but they know their students best, so we'll guide them through that. Next slide. Dance, drum, and visual art classes can function fairly normally with masking and social distancing. The regular activities can be undertaken. However, no performances may be held with an audience. However, that doesn't preclude the teachers from holding, let's say, an in-class dance recital or something like that, as long as there's no audience present. Music is a different story to some degree. Orchestra, guitar, piano, and percussion students, that can be fairly can be done fairly normally. Wind playing and singing can only be done outdoors, as you know, at a distance of 9 feet. However, we are encouraging our teachers to get kids out as much as possible, weather permitting, to engage in singing and playing. And I believe that is it.
Okay, and there are just a few final thoughts, a few miscellaneous items, and next slide, please. I think as you've seen the preparations that have gone on across the district, we are we're very confident that we're ready to go back to the 5 days a week and bring back the 2 final grades who have not been back in hybrid up to this point. I do want to really stress that there are a lot of variables that could change any of these plans. I don't know if you saw the map last night, the United States map of the increase in cases across the northern part of this country. They're plunging back into red again. And so there are things that, you know, how careful we are and how, you know, that we do the things that we need to do. We hope that we will be able to stay where we are for the remainder of the school year. And that's approximately 10 weeks. So we're very hopeful, but so much work has gone into it. And if there is just one takeaway that I would have you know, consider in this presentation, is I think that the various departments have done everything anyone could reasonably do to keep our students and our staff safe. And I think that's been one of the reasons we've had a very good record in this district, is that we have been very careful and very safe, and will continue to be careful and safe as we finish out the year. All of our staff has now had an opportunity to be vaccinated that wanted it. And as you heard earlier, if they are not quite at the maximum effectiveness of that vaccine, will be flexible until the time that they can get back. We want them to be fully vaccinated and to be at the peak of effectiveness before they return. But the vast majority are already there, and so I think we're in really good shape. There will be opportunities for those who, for whatever reason, was not able to get it or chose not to get it. And we have some plans with some local vendors to pick up those that may continue to want the vaccine over the next couple of months. So, but we're in good shape there. The district staff has been at 50%. We rotated 50% in the building, and we will be returning full work schedule on April the 5th, with everyone returning full time. As I said, you know, the safety measures remain in place, and the expectation is that they will be enforced by the administrative staff. You'll probably recall that when we did the calendar, you actually approved 2 calendars at that time. The one with the extended year, 2 weeks, and then the one if the 2 weeks was not approved by the legislature. And while the governor hasn't signed it, we're fully expecting the governor to sign it. She has indicated her support for that. So the calendar that you approved that had the 2 additional weeks will be our school calendar for this year. We want to be absolutely sure that people are aware, as we've had some calls, Beth has received some calls, and the unions received some calls. But this isn't 2 more weeks above and beyond that. We already have incorporated the extended year into the calendar that the board approved. So it's not 2 more weeks. It's certainly just the calendar that was previously approved. And that we were not doing K-5 plus this year, but that would, of course, would have extended the calendar if we had selected to do that. So I think overall, we're in pretty good shape, and we're very optimistic as we move into next week. Believe that we're very, very well prepared to be able to handle the return of our students, and we'll be delighted to have them back. So we're going to stand now for questions from the board on any of the things that you Oh, don't forget, our next meeting will be in person here for board meetings. And so please don't forget to show up here on April the 12th for the next board meeting, which will be in person for board members. And I will turn it back to President Galbraith and we'll answer any questions. Hopefully we got most of your questions. I think we got all of the ones that I'd received, but there may have been others that were raised as you heard the presentation. So we'll do our best to answer those.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland, and thank you everyone who presented. I think that was a very thorough presentation. I'm going to kind of go to the board and maybe come back to myself as I have questions kind of just sprawled all over my page and make sure that I kind of hit them. So let's go ahead and start with Noreen Scott if she has any questions or comments.
Yes. First off, could I, as a point of clarification, what is our last day in class this year?
Okay, I don't know that right off the top of my head. That's did someone pull up the calendar?
It's June 3rd.
Thank you. Thank you. June 3rd.
Okay. And when is graduation? What is the date?
It's the 17th and 18th, I believe.
Yes.
Rio Rancho is the 17th and Cleveland is the 18th, I believe. Is that correct, Renee?
I think it's the other way around. I think Cleveland is the 17th and Rio is the 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Of May. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think there would be people out there who weren't real clear on that. My next question is, how are things as far as our success rate? We had a kind of a stunning number right before Christmas of a failure rate. Where are we at now?
At secondary, the 31st is the end of the quarter. And so we'll have, I think that last number we gave you was the end of the semester. So we'll have a better feel for that number at the end of this week.
Okay. Do you know if we were able to remediate out of that substantial number at the end of the first semester? In other words, have we helped children pass?
I know that teachers have been doing and students have been working to try to better that number. I'm not comfortable making a guess at what that number would be, but I know that we've been offering tutoring. We've offered tutoring virtually as well as in person. So I know that there have been a lot of different ways that teachers are working to help to work with kids.
Renee, thank you so much for answering those questions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Scott. Jeffrey Morgan, you have any questions?
I just have one question, but before I ask my question, just want to say to all of those who participated and helped with the presentation, very good job. Thank you so much for that. My question was to Mike Baker. On one of the slides, he had indicated that they didn't have to do temperature checking anymore. Is there any reason why we're walking away from that?
President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So initially when we started getting students in school, that was a PED requirement. And in order to accomplish that, it kind of backs things up in the beginning of the day. It just takes a lot of time. It wasn't too bad because we only had, we had during the hybrid model, you had, A group that would go to school Mondays and Tuesdays, and then B group would go Thursdays and Fridays. So with 60% of the students going to class, you really only had about 30% of the students that were coming to school. And so it was doable in order to take everybody's temperature. Now what's happening is we're going to have 60% of the normal population approximately coming to school every day. So we probably wouldn't be able to do it in an expeditious manner in order to start school on time. And so the PED took that out of the toolkit.
Wow.
However, there will be, observations that will be going on, and asking students, if they feel well. And there's signs posted throughout the school as well.
Yeah, I saw your part of the presentation where the teachers are going to be asked to observe the students and kind of ask the students questions. Yeah, just a little concerned about that. That's all.
I think that one of the really big challenges, it goes to both your comment and Board Member Scott's comment, is the attempt at this point to spend as much time in the classroom as possible, to maximize that instructional time from now to the end of the year. And so trying to get those students in class. And, as I shared with you in the superintendent's report, concern even over the amount of drills that were being asked for school districts to do, and time when we need every moment that we can get with our students in the classroom if we are going to remediate some of those students who are so far behind. So it's some hard decisions that have to be made, but that's part of it is the need to have those kids in class as quickly as possible. And by the time they get there with the buses, and the time you would do all the temperature taking and you get everybody in, you're going to have lost some valuable classroom time.
Dr. Cleveland, Mike Baker, thank you.
Right. Just a follow-up question to that one before we go to the other board members. But have we actually really seen COVID cases, positive COVID cases come from those temperature checks? I don't know if you have that data really available. As we've been taking temperatures, have we really seen an actual positive case come from that?
President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, we had a long conversation about this in elementary school, knowing that it wasn't mandated, and we kind of had mixed feelings at different campuses. Some said that they felt like they did send people based on temperature, but what we found is the inaccuracy in those handheld thermometers. So having done that myself, a lot of the kids were coming across at 95, 96, and we knew that wasn't accurate. So we were kind of guessing on that sometimes, and we'd have to go get another temperature. So really the conclusion was having the teachers have good eyes on the kids and knowing the kids and assessing each of the kids in their classroom kind of as they came in, and having that opportunity to take a temp if they had any questions. And some schools felt like they wanted to continue taking temperatures, and so they want to continue doing that. Some wanted to do it more randomly as they saw kids, and so we left it open as something they could continue to do. But the inaccuracy of those thermometers makes it difficult to tell whether or not that is how we identified kids. So that was kind of one of the lingering things for us in elementary.
Thanks, John.
It was always a screening tool to start with. It just was then, have the student go to the nurse and ask to, have another temperature taken, ask how they're feeling, as if they, are nauseous, or if they, so it really was just a preliminary screening tool. Generally, I think at the secondary level, and Renee, correct me if you feel differently, at the secondary level, it almost always came from students just saying that they didn't feel well and wanted to be checked out, and they were sent to the nurse and often sent home. So, but it's the younger ones that may not tell you that they're not really feeling well.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I know my son's been too cold a couple of times. he's been the opposite, too cold. We'll go over to Wynn Coleman. You have any questions?
Thank you. So just a couple of things. I know that we had invested money in the, I see Catherine going, we had invested that money in those temperature readers. And so what I'd like to know is now, since we're not taking temperatures, what's going to happen with that equipment? Can that be put to use in another way? If you can address that, please.
Yes, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the school board. So to my understanding, we do take temperature for the staff members. So for example, a district office, we do use those on a daily basis. And so we will continue to use those to take temperature. We just won't use it for the student use. The other thing that we are doing is we're very, very close in regard to actually getting these devices set up to our network, where when an employee comes in with their badge, they can swipe, and this way we know that they're in the building. And so we also want to use it for that purpose as well.
So is this then, are we just going to use these temperature checks, these this equipment for staff only?
At this time, we're using it for staff only.
And how many do we, can you refresh my memory, how many did we end up purchasing and what the expense was for that?
I'm not sure on the exact number, but certainly we'll get you those numbers.
71, we spent $159,253 on them.
Yeah, I do have a concern that we, and I know that we couldn't have predicted that, but I'm hoping that there's a way that we can justify that investment in that number, considering the number that we have at minimum, let alone the expense.
Well, I can tell you the justification is that in the beginning of the school year, we were required to take everybody's temperature. And so that is the device, and that is the reason why we spent that money, is because we wanted to get as many students in school as possible. And at the time, that was the PED requirement. And that is the tool that we decided to use. And so we knew that COVID, is not going to be around forever. We spent a lot of money on PPE. We will never see that money again. We've also spent a lot of money on other things such as barriers that after COVID, those things will likely get thrown out. But the reason why we spent the money is we wanted to get students in school. And that's why we spent the money.
There is one other as well, and that is they're being put into some of the commons areas. So where you have a group of people that are kind of working or meeting together, there's some of those have been placed in those rooms. So that has been really helpful. For example, I know there's one in the conference room here. And when we meet, we all go in and we're around a table. So we're in pretty close proximity. Everybody scans before they go into that meeting room. So I do think they will continue to be used. And I think they are still serving a very useful purpose. But it's different when you have 3,000 kids coming back versus 9,000 kids coming back. And you have to decide, do you want to spend your time doing temperature checks, or do you want them in the classroom? But they are in a lot of those large group areas that Board Member Coleman, I think they're very useful there. And I think if anyone ran a temperature there, then the rest of the group would ask them to please not participate.
Thank you.
Also,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, and while I understand that we were making the decisions based on what was going on, what I'm just hoping is, since we have made that investment, that there are ways to go ahead and still utilize the equipment for other options, even when dealing with more than just maybe staff or things like that. If there are ways to, I would feel better because we voted on it and supported that. If there are ways that we can really take advantage of the equipment.
To add to your comment as well, I said earlier that in the short term, we will be taking attendance essentially from staff coming in, and they can swipe their ID badges. We also want to do the same thing for students. So we are looking at a system, for example, when a student gets on a school bus, that when they get on the bus, that their ID badge will identify them. And this way, attendance essentially on each bus can be taken. Similarly, when the students walk into the school, that we're working towards. We want that device also to take attendance on the students. And one of the reasons is sometimes from time to time we do have missing students, and this will also help us with backtracking when students, let's say, get on the wrong bus or someplace where they shouldn't be. So we do have a future need for these devices, but honestly, we are having difficulty getting this system meshed perfectly with our network, and that's what they're working on currently.
And thank you, Mr. Baker. That might be something that at another board meeting to kind of go over about what we're looking at, what the district is looking at to blend that into our systems. So now I did have one other question, and this probably would go toward Larry Chavez. And what I'm would really like to know is kind of how things are looking when it comes to our seniors and scholarships. And since we've had to delay athletics, kind of what's happening within our state and even our district for scholarships for seniors.
Board Member Coleman. Our coaches keep us up to date on the signings for our college-bound athletes, and there still are a few that are getting offers. And I've seen a big drop in student athletes being offered athletic scholarships to the next level. So in our own district, it's still going at a rate of a normal year. For example, Rio Rancho boys cross country just had I think it was 3 boys and 2 girls signed to go to the next level. Cleveland High School football had 5 athletes signed to go on to the next level, where actually last year Cleveland football did not have any signees. So this year it's on par when it comes to student athletes going on to the next level with an athletic scholarship.
And Mr. Chavez, are you seeing, since we're on par, are you seeing any difference when it comes to where they're getting offers from, or have you seen anything change? I'm just curious about that.
Matter of fact, this is a pretty good senior class. We've had more Division I athletes signing this year than we've had in the previous years. So I mean, it actually goes by class. This is a very, very athletic senior class at both high schools, and we do have those still Division II signees and some junior college signees. So this is a very good senior class across the board at both high schools.
Last question.
And that didn't happen without those coaches working double time to make it happen. And so they could have sat out when we weren't playing, weren't doing, and just waited until the season began. And they didn't do that. And so many of our coaches were very assertive about making the contacts of the colleges and universities and not just sitting around waiting. And so I know for some of the teams, they actually had their scholarships lined up before the season began. But that's because those coaches were working hard to make it happen. And other places where coaches were just sitting back and waiting until the season began, you didn't have that same level of success. So I just want to commend and thank our coaches for taking on that extra effort to try to make that happen for their players, even when they weren't playing, to assure that they would get looked at. I know some of them sent tapes. They did a lot of things saying, keep this young man or young woman in mind. We are still going to have a season. You still can see them play or run or whatever. But I would say that success rate is due almost exclusively to the extra effort, time and effort that they put in to make it happen this year.
Our coaches did an excellent job in networking and using their own sources as to reach out to the college coaches and getting our student athletes recognized, such as a couple of student athletes at Rio Rancho, even before the season started, had offers. So they used their networking skills to get out there and get the names of our athletes out.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Cullen?
Thank you. Sorry for getting so animated earlier, everybody, but I'm a little frustrated as I was reading this and hearing this. So I'll go back to this because I do have a couple of questions. When Jana was saying that there's the temps are not accurate, so is that from the tablets that are not accurate, or are those from the handheld?
Excuse me, that's from the handheld, not from the tablets.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah, I did want to add that we do use the tablets at all the schools for any other adults or visitors that come in, or if a student comes in late. It's really the handhelds were for efficiency. But if it's a slower time for kids coming in, they all have tablets at a lower kid level and a higher kid level so that the kids can use the tablets. And they're very accurate. It's the handheld ones that just aren't.
Okay. So I guess the whole purpose is when we made that decision to buy, when the board made that decision to purchase those tablets, the whole reason is that we had that one meeting that we're like, we got to get them because we're going to have all these kids coming back to school at the beginning of the year because we weren't that's what we thought might happen. And that was a quick way to get our students through to get into campus. But now you're saying that it will hold them up. I mean, I guess that's where I'm confused on that.
The hold up part is we had to have multiple entry points. So they could be used at like the front or one other area, but they couldn't be used at all the different entry points because we had to have kids come in at so many different doors. So we had to utilize handheld as well. If you were to use only 2 for all the kids coming in, that's where it would take a really long time. So that's why we started using some handheld as well.
Okay, but that's kind of how it was sold to the board, was on that back in June. And obviously, and that was a quick decision that the board had made in reference to that, using them for different areas. You know, I think, Mike Baker, you're aware that, you know, Wired Magazine did talk about RRPS in one of their articles that they had contacted us in reference to those tablets. So obviously I'll kind of see how I don't know if Beth let you know that, but kind of see where we're going to go with what we're going to use them for. I mean, obviously because of the facial recognition, there was a concern about that. And so I had talked to Lauren, if we end up using it that way, that we look at a board policy before we use them.
Yeah, so we did, discuss potentially using facial recognition with those tablets. We are not there yet. We're not even close, really, to talk about that process. We're still working on the initial process, and that is just the card reader process in order to take attendance. We did purchase a limited amount, and at the time, because everybody essentially throughout the country, they were doing the same thing. They were trying to purchase these monitors. We knew that the school population would be somewhat limited, so we purchased what we thought at the time was the least amount to get by. And so if we were to, for example, take the temperature for every student at full population, we would likely need many, many more devices. But we're not there yet. And so we do think that we've seen some benefit with the devices. Jana did talk about the accuracy. One of the issues that we do have with the devices is that it takes your surface temperature. So there are instances, for example, like if you're outside and you're really, really hot, when you come in, it may have a tendency to have a high reading. And then what you have to do is step away, wait a few moments, and then retake your temperature. So we've had a number of situations like that, but that essentially was expected. But every day we're taking hundreds, if not thousands, of people's temperatures across the district with those tablets.
So how many of the tablets are being currently used out of the ones that we purchased?
I believe every single one. I think they're working on 2 right now that they're reprogrammed, but every single one that has been purchased has been deployed.
All right, and then so since we'll move on from that, because I think we've kind of covered that enough. Those tablets. Deep cleaning. Since we were doing deep cleaning on Wednesdays, when will that take place, or can we even do deep cleaning now since we're at 5 days?
Yes, we will be conducting, instead of doing deep cleaning starting in the beginning of the day on Wednesday, deep cleaning will begin Wednesday afternoon. And so the janitorial staff and other part-timers will work essentially kind of like an early swing shift on Wednesday. And the deep cleaning will also occur on Saturdays.
Okay. And then, so I had a question in reference to the high school graduations, since we're going to be at, if we stay at yellow and our capacity is only at 25%, and I don't know what our capacity is, what they are at the stadiums. So are we going to have like say one of the high schools have 2 graduations to be able to accommodate both the students and the parents? Not sure who I'm talking to. Black screen right there. Sorry, right?
Oh, am I maybe?
Now you're on.
Now you're on. Okay. Right now we're looking at just 1 graduation for each school. The students, the way that I read it, the students on the field don't count as part of the 25%. So it will just be the family in the stadiums or in the seating. That's the 25%. So they would, I mean, I'm estimating, but probably a couple of tickets per student. If we're still in yellow.
Okay, because I thought that with the capacity, that it would have to include the students as well, but okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
if we follow the same rules as athletics, the athletes and people on the fields don't count. It's just in the seats.
Okay.
And Renee, this is Larry Chavis, and the capacity, the 25% capacity would be 1,600 in the stands. The people on the athletes just do not count toward the capacity.
Did you get that, Catherine?
No, he totally cut out.
It was, I believe, 1,600 people in the stands, and the people on the fields do not count as that.
Okay. All right. And I think that was it. The only other thing is I do hear that the cross country did very well at the state championship this weekend as well. So I wanted to say congratulations. Well, everybody did well, but thank you. I think that was it for my questions.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just add one thing to that. The students were very clear that they wanted to graduate as a class, as a total group, and not be divided. And so that was a very strong feeling of the students themselves. And so we're lucky. We have very large stadiums. One of the things that Mr. Chavez is used to doing and doing very well is bringing in additional seating. We do have, and we've done that for several major big events. We have room for additional seating, for example, at Rio Rancho High, at the north goalpost. You can put additional risers in there. So there is some additional space that we can put in to be able to stretch people out a little bit and not make it so terribly tight. But again, I just want to emphasize that we're going to have to make a call very soon about what we're going to do. You know, when you're a little small school district somewhere and you have a very small graduating class, you can decide to go in the gym, or you can decide to go out, or you can, but when you have classes the size of Rio Rancho, Cleveland's, and particularly the 2 big comprehensives, decisions have to be made in order to pull this off and do it well. So we won't have we won't be able to do it 2 weeks before and change. So if we changed our rating right before, we would just not be able to pull that off.
Yeah, and so thank you. I would hate to see them do it in separate, but that's where I was trying to come up with the numbers with how many students, because we have such big graduating classes. So, and I did have, so kind of going back, Noreen did ask about the failure rate, which I had on here as well. But then I was wondering about attendance rates. Have they improved this semester as well?
I can give you anecdotal on that. I don't have specific numbers. We've definitely seen improved attendance. When we changed the schedule for secondary at the beginning of the semester, that really helped. So I think that was one step in improving, and then we started bringing kids back. And so that was also helpful. So yes, we have seen, I believe when we see the numbers, we'll see increased attendance rates.
Okay, so if we could get in the superintendent's report, both the attendance rate and then the failure rates, as Noreen had asked about as well after this semester. I mean,
we don't have that.
Sorry, that was go ahead.
Sorry. As soon as we get the grades back, as soon as we get that data, we'll be glad to provide that data to you. As I said, we're ending our 9 weeks. So once we get those grades in, get them recorded, get the data back out, we'll be glad to get you that information.
Okay, thank you. I have just a couple questions. Noreen, did you want to ask something or follow up? You good? I just saw you come on all of a sudden. Okay. So quick question for Larry. Has there been any whisperings or anything about the mask mandates for our athletes when they're outside? I'm really concerned about our track going in. One of our cross country boys, he collapsed on the finish line. I think a lot of that was, a mask. The mask contributed to that. But have you heard any whisperings, possibly at least for our outdoor athletes, that maybe that could change?
And I am sure that the mask contributed a lot to his passing out at the end of the race. No, I have not heard anything different about the mask mandate for the student athletes. And as a next cross country runner, I know how difficult it is to run with a mask on, much less with track starting in the next couple of weeks. But I have not heard anything different from the governor's office that masks would be unapproved to compete for athletics. So right now we're still under 100% mask for all student athletes and coaches.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, always hopeful for those athletes. Another question that I hadn't, and I'm not sure if anyone would be able to the right person to ask, I guess, this question, but we talked about the mental health of our students. I'm also really concerned about the mental health of our teachers. Is there anything that we are doing in that regard just to kind of keep checks on our teachers, make sure that they're doing okay? I know just, I have 4 kids in the district, and I know that some of the teachers have been struggling. And of course, we receive a lot of letters across the district, but are there things that we're doing to just kind of check in with them?
Is Mike Chavez still on? If he is, he can answer. If not, I will answer. But you're the better one, Mike.
Well, so President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board, I think there's a couple of different answers to that. I'll start with what we offer officially, and that is we have employee assistance program that's offered for all teachers. And I will tell you, over the last year, we have seen a definite increase in the use of our employee assistance program. And we have actually even had, we do not ask people to identify themselves. It's a completely anonymous program. They are allowed 3 sessions for free. If they ask for more, we allow more sessions, or if Jim Shotwell, the director of the program, calls us and says, this person really needs to come for a couple more sessions until we can get them established with a permanent counselor, we go ahead and allow that. So but we start with 3, and the idea is that the Enhancement Center, which is our program, they're working to get this person established. You know, this is like an entry level program, and they're working to get the person established with a permanent counselor is what they're trying to do. We actually have had an increase this year of people contacting us directly and just saying, I need to talk to somebody right away. We will intervene on their behalf. We will, Peggy or I will call Jim and say, I need this person to be seen today. And Jim is almost always able to accommodate that request. We have had principals call us and ask for group sessions at the schools, and we have accommodated that. Jim has been able to have, is able to arrange counselors to work with groups of staff at schools when they're feeling overwhelmed with a sort of almost a PLC kind of issue. And so we've definitely had a rise in that area. Or if there's an unfortunate incident at a school, say with a child, we can do group sessions as well. So that's kind of the, you know, that's the professional end of it. I would say the other end is that as a department, we have tried very hard to reach out and not so much saying, well, first I would say that we've reached out quite a bit to the administration to kind of work with them to see how they're doing and how their staff is doing. But we've also tried to make sure that you know, particularly Peggy and I, that we are constantly communicating with teachers, that they're aware of who we are, and that they know that they can reach out to us at any time, and that both of us are very available on a very personal level. And I'll be really honest, we get a lot of people contacting us and just saying, you know, I'm struggling with this, or I'm having trouble with that. Sometimes it's sort of on a professional basis, you know, whatever they're having trouble with, or just you know, they're just really having trouble you know, with this situation. And then finally, we have a lot of times principals that will call and say, I'm really, really worried about this teacher. This teacher has been struggling, has made some comments, and we will work very hard to walk that teacher through best practices. We have to be very careful. There's some legal things about things that you can ask people, but if it gets to a point, we've actually had some well checks done on people and stuff like that. So it's been a difficult year, but I would say that you know, our administration, not necessarily Peggy and I, but our administration has done an outstanding job of supporting their staff.
I would also add that we have been very appreciative of the union, both Billy and Gino. There have been some things that have come through them as well to us, and we've appreciated that. They generally bring more general things rather than individual personal things. But if there are individual personal things, then they do send them to Mike, and then, you know, HR tries to support them. But I did want to thank them for their role too, because they have spoken up on issues that they think were really important to the overall well-being of staff in the district.
Okay. Thank you for that. Wynn, did you have a follow-up question? I just saw your hand is up for a second.
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's always a concern. I just want to make sure our teachers are doing well. And so I appreciate, and I can hear honestly the compassion, Mike, in your voice as you talk about our teachers and the things that they've gone through this year, and Dr. Cleveland. So thank you for kind of explaining that to me, and showing that they are being taken care of as our teachers. You know, it's kind of like the mom at home. If you know, the mom at home is a mess, then the whole house is kind of a mess. And so, you know, we need our teachers to be doing well. So thank you. I'm trying
I just said one more thing, you know, and that is that we continue to send the message, and I want to do that again this evening, is there's nothing wrong with asking for help when you need it. There's not anything wrong with that at all. And so trying to break down that stigma of we won't think any less of you. We will think more of you if you need help, that you will step forward and ask for that help. And it is extremely sometimes hard for people to do, but it is completely confidential. It doesn't go anywhere at all, and people can be very confident that no one knows any of the particulars of it. And there could be a time in anyone's life that you need some help. And so we really do encourage staff to take advantage of that employee assistance program. We've been really pleased over many years the board supported that and funded that, and demonstrated that concern for the employees in the school district. So it's there. And sometimes I'm afraid not everyone's taking advantage of it that should. But as Mr. Chavez has said, it's really it's been up significantly this year. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then I have one more question in this opposite of that, but since you had that extended year in your notes kind of there at the end on those other things, I just want to make sure I understand it, and maybe good clarification. As you said, we've received a lot of questions about it. Even in the last hour, I've received a lot of questions about it. But it's that Senate bill, it's 40, I believe, if I'm remembering the right number, Senate Bill 40. And it is mandated, right? It is mandated that we do those extra days. Is that correct?
No, it is. What we have is really, if you don't do it, you have to explain to the state what you're doing that is so wonderful that you don't need it. And so the message is really pretty clear. We expect you to do the 10 additional days or the K5 plus or a combination of the two. And, but if you don't, you have to show them what other programs, efforts, things you have in your district that would make up for would be an equivalent makeup for those 10 additional days. So it isn't actually in statute, but in reality it is, given the parameters that are around it. That being said, I think we've always heard from our staff and our principals that we need that additional time, especially this year. We've missed a lot, and so we need that additional time to try to make up for some of the instructional loss that we have experienced this year.
Okay, and and as you said before, that was the calendar that was already put up onto the website. Okay, I think that's all that I have for questions right now. Board, is there any other questions that came up as we talked through things that you wanted to come back around to?
No.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Dr.
Let me just say one additional thing too. Many of those districts that are trying to do other things are single bus tier districts. So they might extend their school day by 90 minutes because they could do that with their buses. Rancho never has the ability to extend the school day. We start at 7:20 and we end at 4. How much longer is it that you really would want kids to go to school? So in districts that have only single bus tiers, which I would say the majority of districts in New Mexico have, they have the ability of adding on some time. We're doing some additional programs before after school. Albuquerque, Rio Rancho with our 3-4 tier system, that it's just not even within the realm of possibility for us to look at that. Because by that time, say 4 o'clock, for elementary, those little kids are pretty tired by 4 o'clock. They really want to go home. And I don't think you could start high school. I mean, we've had 0 hour, but that 6:20 is really hard for an adolescent to do, at least for some. So
it's true. One of my classes is at 6 in the morning. So
I
yes,
know.
it is.
And I'm so sorry.
I know.
Because I would hate to be motivating students at 6:20 in the morning personally, but
yeah, yes, it's hard. I am, my only concern, I think, and I'll just kind of throw this out there, I wasn't going to say anything, but it's everyone's so tired, and so I guess I feel concerned of shortening anything for but that's me speaking right now, going into April. I'm hoping that as we get a couple months off, I'll feel kind of refreshed going back into the school year, but it's just been such a hard year. So it's difficult to have those days added on, right now and to be doing that. But thank you for helping us to understand that better. I appreciate it. Okay. Anything else from the board? One more time, just looking at your faces. Okay. And Dr. Cleveland, any other wrap up that you want to say before we move on to our next item? You're muted. You did so good the whole time, but now you're muted. Still muted. No, I think she's saying that she's good, but I can't hear. Okay. All right. So we will then go ahead and move on. I do just want to really quickly once again say thank you. Thank you for putting all that together. Thank you. Once again, we did that commendation for our communications group, and it's these kind of things that are really important, not only for our board, but for our community. As Dr. Cleveland and I talked about, putting this special meeting together, it was kind of that, it was a good opportunity for us to inform our community about the things that are going to be happening in our schools in the next week. And so I appreciate that being put together, especially coming right out of spring break for so many. Okay, so moving on to item H, to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion that needs to take place on these that they would need to be taken off the consent? I move to approve the consent agenda. Go ahead.
Second it. This is Catherine Cullen.
Okay. Kim, can you take a roll call for us on this, a roll call vote? Is Kim with me?
Yes, I can do that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and it was President Galbraith that made the motion, and
Catherine Cullen that made the second.
Catherine seconded. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Okay. And then into our business section to consider the approval of the March 8th, 2021 board meeting unapproved minutes. Were there any changes that need to take place on those minutes from March 8th?
Make a motion for the approval of the March 8th board meeting unapproved minutes.
This is Secretary Scott. I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Jeffrey Morgan and a second by Noreen Scott. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Yes. Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott.
Yes.
Board Member Cullen.
Yes.
Board Member Coleman.
Yes.
And President Galbraith.
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. Okay. For our advanced planning, we have a March 29th through, I'm looking at the thing, through April 2nd is the 2021 NMA SBO Spring Budget Workshop. April 2nd is our vernal holiday, that's this Friday. April 12th, the Finance Committee meeting at 4:30. Also, April 12th will be our next regular board meeting at 5:30. As noted, that will be for board members in the boardroom. April 14th, the NMSBA region meeting. We have April 26th is also a regular board meeting at 5:30. May 10th, a finance committee meeting at 4:30, and May 10th, a regular board meeting that will be at 5:30. Any questions or comments on the advanced planning?
Just a point of clarification. People can only observe by streaming. Is that correct? We will not be allowing guests into the boardroom. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We can't have. Kim, did you have? Kim, your hand came up. Did you want to?
Yeah, it came up, but not about that. But that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just think we need to clarify that for folks so they don't try to come to the meeting and then not be allowed in.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. So we will still be taking public comment through the form that is online if you desire to do that. And it will still be, our meeting still will be going over YouTube and broadcast. And it will just be the board members who will be able to meet in the boardroom at this time. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to advise the members of the board who are on the audit committee that I have been asked to come up with a time for a meeting in the next few weeks, so I will be in touch with you about that.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Our meeting for tonight is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.